By the way,
It's
I live in Orange County, so I'm in a neighboring county to you. I forgot to mention this, so this is where I'm talking to you right now.
right, right. Well, even Orange County is going through some of the same
It's crazy.
tensions.
No, Orange County is crazy. It's becoming unbearable, unaffordable for a lot of people. A lot of my friends are just sick and tired of how prices are hiking over here, and they just don't see the horizon. They fail to see how will their kids at least be able to buy a property in Orange County or even sustain a living here. It's very unsustainable the way it is today. It's
But
million plus for a
right,
basic small house.
but you're a scientist. You understand better than I do, um, sort of finite supply. I mean,
It is.
surely if you build it, you know, five five dwellings per acre or whatever, there, and then you fill up every acre you have, isn't it going to inevitably go up in value?
Of course.
So what do you think is the answer?
That's a good question. We need to think differently, just as you were suggesting. We need to think of a multifamily housing, and it doesn't have to be an apartment. It could be mid-rise residential buildings with multiple 3 apartments per floor on an average of 10 to 12 floors per building with proper amenities and affordable prices. And people need to start everywhere in the world. People live in apartment complexes and apartment flats, as you call them in UK, I guess. Right?
Flats, yes.
Yes, flats. People live in flats where there's 3 to 4 flats per story uh, um, per story and I don't understand why we don't have that concept rolled out on a mass scale, on a big scale in major cities in the United States or major counties, popular counties, I should say, the
Well, it's for
cities.
cultural reasons because that's exactly what people came to the US or came from the East Coast to the West Coast to get away from. People came to California for the opportunity to have a little house in a yard. It was they wanted to get away from apartments and tenements and flats. It was because cities in the late 19th century had become polluted and germ filled. There was a lot of illness. There was tuberculosis. There was terrible sanitation. There was all sorts of reasons for wanting to do something better than the cities
But
then.
if you provided them with enough amenities, with enough green space, with a gym within proximity walking distance for every couple of 3, 4 buildings, with proper parks, with you still get the nice weather, you still get proximity and accessibility to pretty much all the other main attractions that you want to that California promises in general. Why not?
Well, that's exactly why I wrote the book. You asked why I
Mm,
wrote the book. It was to make the case that that existed in LA and that it could be extremely desirable. I mean, I love our 6 unit building around a courtyard. And by the way, the California legacy of the cluster of dwellings around an open space, often landscaped, with the lovely experience of the prevailing
but then
winds,
do you own that apartment that you live
well,
in?
no, we don't.
You
And
don't.
that
That's the problem.
obviously,
People
that,
like to own property,
no, I know
but
exactly. And
mm,
exactly. And that's where ultimately California or municipalities in California, they have to figure out, I think, how to make the condo a viable option.
mm.
Because people do want to own. They do. I totally understand that. They want to own, and it is quite difficult for a whole bunch of reasons right now to sort of find the right ownership model at the multifamily. For what I say in my book is that for tax reasons, for building intergenerational wealth reasons, and for cultural reasons, living in a connected dwelling became a status drop in America. It was downgraded as something desirable. Owning the home became the optimum a residential model in Los Angeles, and that was not the case in cities overseas. Nobody expects to own a house in Paris or London or Tokyo. I
It's
mean,
true.
LA and many American cities developed more recently, predicated on the car and predicated on this idea of home ownership. It was government policy. It was enabled. It was, you've got the GI Bill that the home building industry supported it. It was a different culture that produced it. And then it was reinforced culturally. It was reinforced in pop culture. I mean, one of the things I talk about in the book is, if you look for kind of the ideal home model in American life, in movies or in style sections of newspapers, in shelter magazines, it's very rarely the apartment, it's the house. And unless it's New York, and New York is different. But and by the way, parts of Los Angeles are becoming, they're heading in the direction of New York, and that's what people are having a problem with. There's a lot of people who literally use the verb Manhattanize. It's become a verb.
Oh, wow.
We don't want to be Manhattanized. But LA as a global city, as a global region, it either Manhattanizes or it atrophies, and that's where we're at right now. Do we Manhattanize or do we atrophy? I personally would wish there was more consideration of doing what, say, Minneapolis has done, where it got rid of the R1 zoning and replaced it with the possibility to go up just to maybe 2-3 stories in very low rise net residential neighborhoods and build more of the kind of low density multifamily of the type that LA did so well for several decades, but it doesn't pencil out now because it's too low rise and there's too little sites where it's possible, and where it is possible to densify. If you're a developer, why do 6 units when you could do 60? So we're missing that. We're losing that lovely kind of interim model that is very charming. A lot of people have a great affection for, but it too is sort of very costly. And I think I'm not alone in saying it would be wonderful to see more of that kind of thing.
You think we're going to have more new developments altogether, like I wouldn't say cities, but new communities being built somewhere inland towards we got a lot of space, we got a lot of land there. I mean, towards the desert, right?
Yeah, I'm
You
sure.
think we will venture into that area and start building
Oh,
new communities?
well,
Because we're gonna keep running out of space and people.
I think wherever it is permissible to build, people will build. I mean, I now, having grown up in the UK, which introduced these green belts after the war, so you do have a kind of very distinct difference between city and countryside. And I saw the same recently when I went to San Luis Obispo for a talk, and saw there that they have a green belt, so they've sort of prevented sprawl. Portland did the same. Now it does have stopping sprawl has an impact on house prices, and the corollary of stopping sprawl, of creating green belts, really probably has to be that you then allow greater density in the cities. And right now, that's not been the corollary. So it does throw up real affordability issues. But you know, we've seen so much sprawl in California. We're losing so much of the natural landscape.
If you are in power, if tomorrow morning you woke up and you're in power on the legislative side of things, and you are able to steer things more rapidly and quickly to one side or the other, what would be the decisions that you would immediately take?
You mean if I was an autocrat? Because nobody here actually has the power to do anything sort of
Not even the
unilaterally.
local Los Angeles municipality or
No,
Los Angeles government?
there's so many stakeholders involved in so many decisions, and we see it with the Mayor Karen Bass. She is trying heroically to do something about homelessness, the unhoused, but it's not easy. She's even she entered office and came up with the Executive Directive 1, which is intended to streamline the development process, the permitting process for denser housing on the thoroughfares. But even that, has met with all sorts of sort of complications and complexity, and so nobody can unilaterally make change in California. That's both its blessing and also it can get in the way, but what is the one thing? There isn't any one thing. There's multiple things. I mean, there just has to be a way of incentivizing ownership of multifamily housing at prices people can afford, supplying them with plenty of gorgeous access to open space, so that they get some taste of the California dream. But how does one get there? How does one get there with policy? I don't know. I mean, maybe there's certain things like
major challenge. I wish I had the answer for.
Yeah.
I would have spared you that hard time.
Yeah.
But then you had the research on awesome and affordable. Talk to us about awesome and affordable. We only have a few minutes left, and I know you're on a very tight schedule.
And by the way, the executive producer of Awesome and Affordable texted me 20 minutes ago saying, wow, where's your copy for Awesome and Affordable? So I do have to jump off and actually get on with it. So Awesome and Affordable is what I call a multimedia project. It is sponsored by FORT, Friends of Residential Treasures Los Angeles, which is a nonprofit that was founded about 5 years ago with the goal of simply engaging Angelenos in interest and delight in their residential history. It focuses on both single-family homes and multifamily. It also gives out research grants and it produces events, understanding that affordability in housing is the big issue right now. I got a research grant to develop a year-long exploration of affordable housing, and that starts with what on earth do we even mean by that? How do we even define what affordability is, and then how do we sort of achieve affordability, whether it's ranging from so-called naturally occurring affordable housing, which is just housing that's been around for several decades and is maybe rent controlled and is therefore affordable, or housing that might be deed restricted, built by nonprofit developers using tax credits, because currently the only way to keep housing affordable is by some form of intervention. And what does that intervention look like? Or are there neighborhoods that are still inherently affordable because the land is still relatively affordable, and so you can be a private developer and you can build units that are somewhat affordable? And when I say somewhat, I'm meaning, who are we even talking about? Are we talking about people who are earning 60% of area median income, or are we talking about people who are earning 120% of area median income? Are we talking about service workers? Are we talking about nurses? Are we talking about teachers? Are we talking about cultural workers? So we're trying to unpack all of that, and we're then each month we're releasing a different example of a so-called awesome affordable building, because just like my book, it's the same thesis as the book. Try and persuade with carrots, not sticks. So we're saying, don't be skeptical and sort of fearful of affordable, quote, housing. Rather, welcome it, embrace it by celebrating the really good examples of it. And so we are each month we're rolling out a different example of an affordable building. One month it's very contemporary micro units in Pasadena. The next month, which is actually this month, it's a restored bungalow court in Hollywood. The first month, it was a medium rise, relatively high density, deed restricted, 100% affordable building close to mass transit in Mar Vista that modeled doing that kind of development really well. It doesn't all have to be characterless and generic. It can be characterful, and it can be lovely to live in. Like you said, you have terraces, you have amenities, you have a garden on the roof, you have a gym, you have things that make these buildings really appealing to live in, and it can be affordable and still lovely to live in. So that's what awesome and affordable is. We're doing events that are relating to it. We've had public conversations. So that's what it is. It's, you can find it at fortla.org. All you have to do is put in your email to get access. It's not a paywall, but they just want your emails, and you in return you just get invites to their various different trails they do. It's not onerous to join Fort LA. And so that's what it is. It's kind of a continuation of the work in Common Ground. I'm working on it with a guy called David Kirsch, who's extremely interesting, spent a lot of years in the labor community, the construction labor community, so brings to the table great knowledge of how the sausage is made in City Hall, the stakeholders involved in doing housing policy. And I'll just wrap by saying Awesome and Affordable has another component, which is something called the Housing Terminology Playbook, which is a kind of encyclopedic breakdown of all the different players, all the different pieces of legislation, all the different ordinances, all the different policies, local, state, federal, that influence the production and the preservation of housing in Los Angeles, because it's such a huge and complicated ecosystem and issue, and we wanted to try and unpack it.
But then on the other hand, we have great people like you who are very visionary, who are navigating and driving in the right direction. That keeps us hopeful for a brighter future to us and our kids.
Well, that's very, very kind of you to say that. I'm just one of many involved in this conversation. And I do have optimism. I do think the West Coast and Los Angeles are inherently optimistic, even as it faces great challenges. And it's been a thrill to talk to you.
It's very interesting.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. I have tons of more questions that I'm sure that we will be able to kind of, find some time in the future on your very busy calendar to talk even more and dive even deeper into these questions, probably with you and some other guests as well, from the great people that you just recommended on this episode. Thank you very much, Frances. Good luck with the rest of your day. I much appreciate the time that you allocated for us, and look forward actually to communicate even further in the future. But thank you a lot.
Likewise.